right, wonderful. Well, welcome everyone. I will hand it right over to my colleague, Professor Shannon Wall, to give us the introduction of our speaker for today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rocha. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to introduce Kim Davidson. She is a licensed clinical social worker and a BSW MSW social work instructor. Kim has been teaching social work for over 10 years at Northeastern Illinois University and has been an adjunct professor at UIC for 1 year. Kim has also been practicing social work for 15 years and previously worked at Devers Place for 13 years as their clinical service director and program administrator. As the clinical service director, Kim was responsible for implementing all clinical programming throughout Devers. This included providing staff development opportunities, supervising case management and health services staff, overseeing the social work internship program, and ensuring that Devers Place consistently implemented their theoretical approaches and evidence-based practice throughout their housing programs. Prior to her work as a clinical service director, Kim was the program administrator for the Safe Haven and Hattie Crawley apartments. In this role, she worked to oversee 2 housing programs for highly vulnerable women, and she specialized in working with severe and persistent mental health symptoms. In addition, she has experience in HIV case management, street outreach, and women's health. Kim is passionate about exploring the intersections of gender, trauma, social use of substance abuse, mental health illness, and homelessness, and she works to incorporate the interests into all of her practices. I want to introduce our speaker for today, Kim Davidson.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get started. So I'm going to warn you now, I have a lot of content. So I'm going to try to get through this. And if we go a little over, you're welcome to log off. And I'm going to go ahead and also make sure that I have the chat visible. So if people have questions, and there will be some times where I ask you to chime in, I can see it all. Okay. So we're going to talk about taking care of ourselves today. And so I title this Being the Best Social Workers That We Can Be, because I think that we all come into this work because we want to be present and kind and compassionate to the folks that we work with. And then time and our day-to-day lives can impact our ability to do that. And so I don't think we can talk about taking care of ourselves without also putting it in the context of our work and what brought us here in the first place. And so today I'll be trying to connect the 2 of those things for everyone. So I'm basing a lot of this off of a book that I love, which is this book here. This is the cover of it. It's called Trauma Stewardship, an everyday guide to caring for self while caring for others. And so we'll be diving into some of the topics from that and also some other sources that I have found really useful in finding a self-care practice that works for me. But that being said, every time I give a presentation on this, it's a nice reminder of how often I have strayed away from this in my work. And usually I realize I'm not caring for myself when I'm feeling really overwhelmed. Sometimes when I'm giving this presentation and I'm like, oh yeah, it's time to really bring it back and focus on myself. So I just want to say that just because I am talking about this today doesn't mean I am in any way an expert at having this figured out in my life. I just think it's sort of a lifelong journey that anyone who's committed to helping others embraces, kind of takes on. So, all right. So we talk about exposure to trauma in our work, and we use a lot of different terms. So we often call this compassion fatigue, vicarious trauma, burnout. You may have heard these words used before. So this book introduces another term that I really like, which is this idea of trauma stewardship. And it kind of takes all of these responses and groups them together with also potential solutions. And so the term trauma stewardship is defined as the entire conversation about how we come to do this work, how we're impacted by it, and how we make sense of and learn from those experiences. So it's the impact, and then it's also like the specific impact on us, but then what we do with that as we move forward. And I love it because it's a much more action-based approach. I feel like it's very, very proactive and gets us really looking at ourselves in different ways. So the definition of stewardship is the careful and responsible management of something entrusted to one's care. And when we think about social work, so often like it's really that we are caring for others. We're responsible for, providing services. And so if we're going to do that, we also have a responsibility to be and bring our best selves. We're trusted often with our clients' lives. If you become supervisors, you're going to be trusted with your staff's lives as well. And I'll tell you, burnout can really impact them. And we want to do right by ourselves, and you want to be in this for the long haul. It's a gift, I really believe, to be a social worker. I believe it's a gift to be able to be a part of someone else's journey. But with that gift also comes a responsibility. And so that's what we're going to focus on today. So I love a metaphor. Some of you have had me for class, and so you know this about me. I really do love a metaphor. And so I'm going to share with you one of the most important metaphors I've ever learned about self-care, and it's the metaphor of the cup. And so to be extra visual, for those of you, hopefully you can see my face, I have gotten 3 various cups from my cabinet to demonstrate. Okay, so think about a cup. I have a little cup right here. This is one from my rice cooker. Okay, so think about a cup as our capacity to hold pain and discomfort. We all have a cup. That's our capacity. And as we navigate the world, slowly our cups are going to fill up. As we experience challenges, things within our lives, things within our work, slowly we will hit our capacity, right? When you are working with folks who have experienced a lot of trauma, they may have a smaller cup because they may not have had the time, opportunities, and resources to build their capacity to hold pain and discomfort. In so many ways, that's the work of a social worker, is to help build that capacity. But when you're working with someone, you may find that they have a smaller cup as they are navigating the world. And so here's the social worker's cup. Oh, wait, no, we're going to start with this cup. Okay, so here's the social worker's cup. So one of the things about, so let's imagine you're working with a client in your social work career, your internship. They get up in the morning, they have a meeting with you at 9:30 in the morning, which is a horrible time to schedule a meeting with somebody, just so you know. But so you have a meeting with you at 9:30 in the morning, and they get up and they go to the refrigerator and they realize that they don't have any food. And so they're scrambling around trying to find something to eat before they come to meet with you. And so their cup starts to fill up. And then they realize that they can't find transportation passes to get to you. They thought they had a venture card, but they can't find it. So they're scrambling to get change, and then they can't find the change. And so they have to walk to your office. Their cup fills up. And then they get to your office, and on the way, right when they're walking in the door, someone runs into them, slams into them really hard. They exchange words. There's a heated argument. They walk into your office, cup is up to here. Okay. Then you come out and it's 10 o'clock and they were supposed to be there at 9:30, and you have another appointment at 10 o'clock, and you say, whoa, I thought we were meeting at 9:30. I don't have time to meet with you right now. Did you bring the paperwork that I asked you to bring? Which they forgot. What do you think happens?
The cup's overflowing.
The cup's overflowing. So what does it look like when the cup overflows?
Probably not pleasant.
So not pleasant. And what does unpleasant look like? And we all can think of a time when your cup has overflowed. I can think of quite a few times my cup has overflowed. You can put it in the chat box too. I have that open.
I think it looks like chaos. It looks like disorganization, overwhelming feeling, anxiety.
Anxiety. I will tell you, in my experience, it usually results in me being cursed out. Honestly, like that's what it usually looks like. I'm about to get called a bunch of things. It's about to get real heated really quickly because their cup is overflowing. And so the job of a social worker is to work with folks whose cups are overflowing and to help them pour that pain, pour that discomfort. And we let them pour it into our cups. And so it makes room for them. So then they can go out and navigate the world. And then hopefully, as we're helping them pour out that cup into us, let out some of that pain and discomfort. Sometimes it looks like them cursing us out. Sometimes it looks like a really good session of just talking. Sometimes it's like super therapeutic. But when we let them pour that out, then they have the space to navigate their world. The challenge then becomes that they're pouring it into our cup, right? And so we have to have the capacity to hold our pain and discomfort and theirs. And because when you get your social work degree, if you are a practicing social worker, you know that like you don't have a magic gift that then happens where like your life is free of pain and discomfort. Your cup never fills up so you can hold the pain and discomfort of others. Your cup will continue to fill. And so you need to have a bigger cup to hold and make space for that, and to hold and make space for your life. So I have a bigger cup here. So really what you want is to have a bigger cup. And when I would do this training, a lot of times I would go to like 7-Eleven and I would go in and get the double big gulp. You know what I'm talking about? Like the cup that's like the size of your head, like that cup. That's what you want. That's what you're striving for. You want to have as much capacity to hold pain and discomfort as possible, because you cannot control the inflow.
Didn't respond the way that I wanted to respond, but
and so it's just really important that you build your capacity. So when I think of self-care, I think about it as not just like a bubble bath or something that you do for yourself. It is the way to build your capacity for pain and discomfort. And so a lot of the skills that I'm going to share with you today are also skills that I share with folks that I work with as well. Because they're universal. They are the tools for building the size of the cup. So, love a metaphor. Why is self-care important? It is important because it will make this work sustainable. I love my work. I love it just as much as when I started. And whenever I felt myself strained from that, I've done something different or within myself or in my career, because you want to do this and you want to do it sustainably for the long haul. Everyone starts out doing social work. They go to their internship, big, hopeful ideas. And then eventually you hear someone talking about a client in a way that you never thought you would hear. You hear people talk to staff in ways you never thought that you would hear. And then what you realize, and what hopefully you realize, is that when they started out, that's not who they wanted to be. That's the toll that burnout takes. That is the toll of not being mindful and stewarding ourselves through this work. We need a world where people can show up, where people can listen, where people can care, where people have the space to hold others' pain and discomfort. But compassion leads to compassion fatigue, and trauma has a cumulative effect. Those cups are filling, right? And so ideally also we're going to talk about, hopefully you've got someone else with a bigger cup that you're also pouring into as well to make that space. Okay. How do you know you're stressed? So I've got the chat box open. The first part of this is like the real downer part, because I'm going to talk about like ways that this shows up. So because so much of it is about being self-aware and being able to kind of take your own temperature, like, have I strayed, you know? So just, I'd love to hear from some folks in the chat, or just, you can share. How do you know you're stressed out, overwhelmed? Quickly agitated, headaches, breakout, I can't sleep, body aches. Gosh, the chat box is so efficient for things like this.
Yeah, you're like real quick to anger. Like things that normally wouldn't set you off just become incredibly annoying.
Yeah.
And you know that, which bugs you even more.
Yes, because it's happening and you know it's irrational, but it doesn't matter because it's happening. And that's why I feel like it's so important to connect it with that feeling of the cup overflowing, because to me it is very visual. Like that's exactly what it feels like. It's like, you know, and kind of lose control. You drop your keys while trying to open the door and that makes you cry. Oh, I love that example. Or like I remember I like lose things. Like I would like because I'd just be so distracted. I one time had locked my keys in my car 3 times in 1 week. It's like I don't even understand. See, cups overflowing in so many different ways. So okay, we're gonna go through these really quick. This is a very pixelated picture. This is but I'm going to break down each one of these. So in the book Trauma Stewardship, she talks about this concept of a trauma exposure response, and that's how she refers to these things. So this is like how some of this shows up. So I'm just going to go through these really quickly. Feeling hopeless or helpless, so you start feeling responsible for others' decisions, especially when you're helping others. You see no relief in sight. You stop. This one for me is my big red flag because my values are hope. Like really, one of my core values is hope. And when I start losing hope in the folks that I work with, whether it be my staff or the clients that I've worked with, I know that my cup is filling up. You have a sense that you can never do enough, feeling of almost like internalized oppression. And this can be magnified by sometimes the reasons that we come into this work, because we often all come into this work because we have our own personal experiences that make it important to us and that give us another reason to buy in. And so because we have this extra reason, we've got our heart all in. And then we go to agencies that are understaffed, where we're underpaid, and then we are in this work to fight oppression, and then we are experiencing oppression, and it's playing out in our workplaces as well. But then we get this sense of like, I just need to stay late. I just need to do more. I just need to do more. And the reality is that the pain and suffering will continue. Like it is endless. And what you need to find in this work is your own boundaries to navigate that. Hypervigilance. This is, I feel like, what I saw a lot of in that quickly agitated. It's like you're always on edge. It's a trauma response. Almost all of these are trauma responses. So trauma responses and then trauma exposure responses. So we're always on. We're always waiting for the next thing to happen. At work, this would look like you'd have a fight out at work, and then I would always be waiting for another fight to break out. Like I would always break it out. And so I would be like walking down the halls, like ready, have my mental health petitions ready, just in case. Diminished creativity. When we're feeling burnt out or overwhelmed, we really like black and white, no shades of gray. My staff would often come to me and be like, but just tell me the rule. Tell me what needs to happen. And I'm like, well, we don't really have rules. It doesn't really work like that. Like, what will happen to make this person lose their housing? I'd be like, we're trying not to help them lose their housing. Like that's not, but when we start trying to look for facts to guide us instead of thinking creatively, it's another sign that we're overwhelmed. Minimizing. So you come home from a really hard day at work and someone says to you, your partner says to you, oh, I had the worst day today. I had a client just curse me out. And you had a day where you listened to people's stories of trauma for like 8 hours. And then you look at them and you're like, do you know what a bad day is? Excuse me? That is a sign that we are a little overwhelmed, because ideally pain is pain. Everyone's allowed to have a bad day and define it however they define it. But when we start weighing that, that's another sign. Chronic exhaustion. This was another one I saw in the chat. And this comes out like you're super exhausted all the time, get sick. You finally take a vacation and then you get sick. I don't know if that's happened to anybody, but that is a common thing. Deliberate avoidance, inability to listen. You don't answer your calls, you don't talk to people, you isolate, you go out less, you just are tired of talking, so you don't want to talk to anybody. Dissociating. So you cut off to guard yourself. So dissociating is like when we separate our mind and our body. And we're going to talk about self-care techniques, and a lot of them are trying to reconnect our mind and our body. But this is, so many of these are protective. So someone's telling you a story about trauma or something that they navigated that's really challenging, and you just like, you're physically there, but your brain's not there anymore. You just like go somewhere else. And just kind of tune out. Feeling of persecution, feeling like you don't have the agency to change your job, to change your life. I used to have a staff member. This was like how I always knew she was stressed out because I supervised her for like 12 years. So I got really used to her cycles of stress. And she would come to me and she'd be like, I'm going to quit. I'm going to quit. And I would be like, what do you mean you're going to quit? She said, I'm going to quit because I have to go clean this person's apartment. And then I have to go take the trash out. And then I'm not going to get home to my son because I have to do this and I have to do all this paperwork. And I'd be like, okay, so I'm your supervisor and I'm not telling you to do this. So who's telling you to do this? And so she would constantly feel this sense of not having control over her job when really she was putting those things on her job. And we'd have to step back and say, okay, what do you actually have to do? You know, but this feeling of like taking on so much and then feeling like you don't have control over what you get to say no to. Feeling guilty. Feeling guilty about not being able to give enough, feeling guilty about the things that you have that the folks that you work with might not have. All of these things, you're going to see common threads about this that are going to just stop you from being present and being able to show up in your own life outside of work. Fear. Fear of feelings. I can't have any time by myself because what if I start thinking, oh no, being afraid of being vulnerable, being afraid of being hurt by experiences. And so like disengaging from those things. Anger. Anger is a secondary emotion. It stops us from feeling other things. We get really angry at injustice. We get angry at treatment from our workplace. We get so caught up in our anger and we kind of forget the joy in our life or our jobs. See, this is the real downer part of this presentation. It's going to get better, I promise. Inability to empathize, numbing. We love to numb. Ooh, numbing is so easy, so good, especially it was like the 2020 skill of the year. So it's like addiction, alcohol, drugs, overwork. You can be addicted to work. That's a thing that happens. It's a thing I've done before. Caffeine, Netflix, like you can numb. And there's a really important distinction because some of these things work can be rewarding. Eating can be rewarding. Watching Netflix can be rewarding. Watching 8 hours of the same like HGTV show because you don't want to think and you don't want to be traumatized and you don't even know what you did with your day, that's numbing. Watching a show that like you really enjoy, that you look forward to and you schedule time to watch, that's an enjoyable activity. And so it's really important to see that a lot of the things that are numbing activities can also be things that can bring joy. It's just about the reason you're doing it, the why behind the what. Grandiosity. Whew. I had this when I started out in social work because I like loved being a social worker. People ask me, what do you do for a living? I would be like, I'm a social worker. I change lives. It is everything I do. I love social work. And they'd be like, oh, and I'd be like, what do you do? I work in banking. Oh, I'm sorry. I would like get so caught up in that part of my identity. And because I loved my work. But then what I realized when I started running programs and having like a lot of responsibility is the more my work became my identity, the more I saw my self-worth is tied up in my work. When work didn't go well, I wasn't doing well. And so now if you ask me who I am, I'm a partner, I'm a friend, I'm a daughter, I'm a social worker, I'm a teacher, but I have other roles. But making our work a big part of our role it's a really important thing to keep aware of. Okay. Oh, that's it. Yay. 16 things. All done with those. Okay. So now let's talk about the how do we. So it's really important to be aware of those things because those things are kind of the ways that this shows up. And you can see some of them are things that we are like addiction. Okay. Like I'm drinking more. Like that's something that we might see as like something that we might be really aware of. But like not being able to think creatively, those are more subtle ways that this shows up. So why do we take care of ourselves? And this is a quote from the Trauma Stewardship book. The key to stress resistance is a sense of personal control, pursuit of personally meaningful tasks, healthy lifestyle choices, and social support. I have a really loud cat, y'all, and my cat just came in the room, and I'm just going to apologize in advance. Some of you have me for class, and you know this is a thing. It's a problem. Okay. Sorry. All right. So what is helpful? When we talked about a lot of those things that let us know that we have strayed away from being our best selves, you can see that it often involves a mind-body separation. It is all things that take us away from the present moment. And so some of the most important self-care strategies that I'm going to share with you today are the ones that are going to help center you and bring you back to this moment. I'm going to share things that I think are really little and small that you can do, because one of the things that often happens when we try to integrate things to take better care of ourselves is we aim really high. Like, I'm going to go to the gym 4 times a week, and I'm going to eat right, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to go on walks every day. And then when we don't, it's just another thing we feel bad about or we beat ourselves up about. And honestly, it can be fundamentally as simple as doing something 10 minutes a day that will build your capacity. So it's also about building our capacity when we aren't in struggle. So when we're in a better place, so thinking back to the metaphor of the cup, right? So if something is like pouring into our cup, we can't make our cup bigger because we're too busy trying to like just navigate that water. And so the best time to do this, we're headed towards an end of semester break, is to build your capacity for students that are entering the field next year. Think about, what can I do now in this summer to make my cup as big as it can be? And it's really about connecting our body with our minds. All right. So now I'm going to share some stuff from some books and some people that spend time researching this stuff that I really like. So the first one is this book, and this book came out, I think this year. It's called Burnout: The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle. And I'm going to share something that I thought was super interesting about this. So I have a picture of a tunnel here. Gosh, I love metaphors. All right. So the way they talk about feelings is that feelings and emotions are like tunnels. You have to move through them. You have to feel them all the way through and let your body know that they're done before they pass. So neuroscience tells us emotions last 90 seconds. A feeling will last 90 seconds. And you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, but when I feel anxious, it lasts like hours and hours and hours. It's because then we feel a feeling about the feeling. Then we get afraid of the feeling and we make it go further and further, right? So, but an actual emotion, sometimes I'll tell myself this. I'll be like, this will last 90 seconds. Let's get through these 90 seconds. But we need to feel the feelings. And so if you see, like with numbing and all of those things, if we are numbing, we're not ever feeling the feeling. So our cup's just like filling, and we're not making space. There's ways we can make space by just building our capacity without having to pour into someone else. And one of them is by, so this book talks about this thing called completing the stress cycle. So what is the stress cycle? My cat, sorry. It's the moment at which our bodies learn that after facing danger, we're now safe. When we complete this stress cycle, that's what we do. So we can't usually control the things that stress us out, but we control how we respond to it. And so when our body experiences something that makes us feel uncomfortable, it doesn't usually know that's over. And so we need to do something to alert our bodies that it's over. My partner just sneezed, sorry. Twice, okay. So when a stressful event is over, we want to let our bodies know that it's past. And so there are 7 ways that this book identifies that you can do that. The first one involves movement. And so when we talk about movement, it can be running, dancing, swimming, something that's done for 20 to 60 minutes. It's going to let your brain know I'm safe. It's okay. Breathing. I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about breath. Breath is a thing in our body that we don't control and can control all at the same time. Another powerful metaphor, right? So deep breaths. And I have some examples here of different ways you can do it. So breathe in for 4 seconds, out for 6 seconds, or in for 5, hold for 5, exhale for 10. Even if you can do this 3 times as a cycle, it will make a huge difference. It's science. Because when oxygen fills your body, it's going to fill your lungs and slow down your heart rate. And so this was one of the first things I ever did to navigate my stress. And then I couldn't believe it. But something as simple as changing the way we breathe can change the way we navigate the world. Talking to people, social interaction is another thing that lets your brain know everything's okay. Helps us complete that stress cycle. Laughing deeply, laughing at something funny, talking to a loved one. And one of the things that they found in their research is that if you can hug a person, I found this really interesting. This is one of the things that I've integrated into my life for 20 seconds. There's been a lot of research, a 20-second hug, it's a long hug, but it actually resets your brain. They said that's actually out of the book. It's one of the things that people are the most likely to do. Crying is another way. And doing something creative, painting, writing, music, storytelling. So these are all ways that when we are stressed, we can complete that stress cycle, tell our bodies that we're okay, hit the reset button, make some space in our cups. All right. Another book that I really like is this book here, Self-Compassion by Kristin Neff. She defines self-compassion as being kind and understanding to ourselves when we're confronted with personal challenges. And there are 3 components of self-compassion. The first is self-kindness instead of self-judgment. And treat yourself like you would talk to a friend. So I want you to take a minute. Think about the last time, and this is going to be something that you feel comfortable sharing. Think about the last time a friend called you and they were stressed, really overwhelmed, being really hard on themselves. Can you tell me what you said to them? You can put it in the chat. I have the chat open. Friend's upset. What did you say?
I'm sorry, Professor, can you say that one more time?
Sure. So when you're thinking about a friend or a loved one in your life, the last time they were upset, what was it that you said to them to make them feel better? How did you respond to them? What was something that you said to them?
I'm on my phone, so I'm just going to say it.
Yeah.
Honestly, for me, I know what I would do, but in my life right now, I don't have people like my family in my life, or my life is very, I guess you would say I live in a bubble kind of. There's different reasons for that, but I'm learning what I would say, and that would be to empathize and say, oh my gosh, that's got to suck, or oh, that's got to be painful, and then try to, acknowledge their pain and maybe bring up something positive, like the guy that went down in the well and said to the other guy, oh, you're right, it is dark down here. I always remember that. You showed it to us in class. But yeah, that's what I would do.
So show them kindness, show them support, show them empathy. Now think about the last time you did something where you were really mad at yourself or you felt really ashamed. How did you talk to yourself? And is there a difference? I'm teaching practice, and one of my students actually just did a group activity with us with our class. We were practicing, and it got me thinking about how to apply. I'm my toughest critic. We usually are. So this idea of self-kindness, it sounds so simple. It's talk to yourself like you would talk to a friend, but being really mindful when we are in moments of struggle of how we talk to ourselves. And imagine, would I say this to someone I love and care about? And then really, really think then, what would I say? And how do I talk to myself like that? So that's the first component of self-compassion. The second is this idea of common humanity. And if you've had me for class, I talk about this a lot, which is the idea that suffering is a part of life. And I don't think in our culture and in our world right now, we've made enough space for the reality of suffering, that suffering is a part of the human experience. Everyone suffers. I think this last year has taught us that we don't know a lot about tolerating discomfort, but this is not like when we experience suffering, when we experience pain, loss, anxiety, depression, we are not alone. This is a shared human experience, and reminding ourselves of that. Because often the opposite of that is feeling really isolated. And then the next component of self-compassion is mindfulness, which is being present in the moment, not overly identifying with our thoughts. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit more, observing your thoughts at a distance, being able to say, I think I'm feeling a little anxious, instead of I'm an anxious mess. It's a difference. But when we recognize that difference, we actually create a distance in our brain that allows us to move through those feelings. And it brings us back to the present moment. So at the last slide, I have some things that you can do. And one of them is actually a self-compassion survey. It's an online survey. You can take the survey and see which one of these areas you're the strongest at, which you could focus more on. And then there's like some tangible tools that they give you. So all right, so these are some more general things, creating space for inquiry. If you have me for class or field, you know, the first thing I do is I ask my students to identify their values. And we revisit that throughout the year. And when we feel overwhelmed, it's really important to step back and ask ourselves, why am I doing what I'm doing? Why do I want to do this work? And then also ask yourself, like, if what you're doing right now is working for you. Explore the reasons that you also come to want to do social work. And if it's based in your trauma, make sure that you are attending to your roots, because remember, we have a responsibility to ourselves to be our best selves for the folks that we work with. Choose our focus. If you've ever been around a person who's always negative, you know it's contagious. And so focus on the negative is habitual. So being able to reframe, tap into our resources, explore our gratitude. Gratitude practice is another thing, as simple as like writing down 10 things you're grateful for every day. When I am struggling to build the size of my cup, that's the one thing I do every day still. It's so important to me. And have a plan B. If you hate what you do, and there were times in my career when I did, I had to realize that this isn't the only thing I can do. I can do other things. Even if you don't do them, making sure that you are focusing on those things or have it in your head. All right, building compassion and a community that sustains you. So the reality of taking care of yourself is it really only works if we're also in communities that care for each other. And isolation is another thing that makes us feel worse. So tapping into your support, having friends that listen and hold you accountable. Culture can't take away trauma, but it can build resilience, healing, and rehabilitation. So finding supportive communities and because the reality is we can care for ourselves all we want, but if we don't have people in our lives that support that care and also care for us, it won't have an impact. Also, I have on here, get a therapist. Get a therapist. Don't be a social worker and tell people, I'm going to be your therapist, but I don't need a therapist. I tell all my students, I've had a therapist for 15 years. I don't care who knows it. I think it is the one self-care thing when I cannot do anything else. I can unload on a person with a bigger cup than me, and I pay them to have a bigger cup than me, and it helps me. And so I really always encourage my students and my staff and everybody, have a person you pour your cup into. So one space you have in your life where the person doesn't have, like with friends, with family, they have history, assumptions about the decisions you make. You basically intentionally pay a person to have no assumptions and no judgments about you. And if they have judgments, you need to find another therapist because it's not a good therapist. All right. Another slide with another book that I love, Have Compassion for Your Body. We often see self-care as selfish, but we need to know that it has a ripple effect. And when we talk about body, this is a book I actually just finished. This book is called Your Body is Not an Apology. And it's about having a different approach to your body. And it really talks about not self-esteem, not acceptance, like not like, I have esteem for myself, or not, oh, I think I'll accept myself. How do we love ourselves? How do we love ourselves? And we challenge the messages that we're given. So when we talk about the things that we do that are good for our body, it's always going to be things like movement, nutrition, exercise, and small changes like that. But I also have a resource here to something called intuitive eating, which is a non-dieting approach to like listening to your body, eating when you're hungry, giving your body what it wants, moving when your body wants, but to remove that experience from a larger system of oppression that sends us messages about our bodies and why we need to do those things, and what a body should do, how a body should function. So I have a link to something about intuitive eating there. But it's really about, so this book is, there's a workbook and there's also a general book, but really about seeing your body as your ally. And she defines it as radical self-love and puts the experience of loving ourselves and our bodies in the framework of then loving other bodies and also tearing down systems of oppression. So highly recommend it. Breathing is so good. It's how we're all alive. Breathing deeply is even better because then we're alive and not panicked. So we want to move that negative energy, be aware of our feelings, but then don't absorb it. Breathing is healing. So breathing exercises, like I talked about before, really useful. Also anything that's going to ground you in the moment. When we are triggered, because we get triggered by things and we step out of the moment, we need something to bring us back. It can be as simple as cold water on our face or on the back of our neck. This 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique, name 5 things you see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you hear, 2 things you smell, 1 thing you taste. Little like brain stuff when we are triggered. This is where our brain has logic and reason. Down here is where our fight, flight, freeze response is. We're triggered, we go down here. Any grounding technique or breathing technique where we are bringing ourselves back in control of our mind and body moves us back here. So these very simple things bring us back in the room. I do these. I've done them with people who I work with that are triggered in the moment and can be really helpful. Meditation and presence. Okay, I'm going to show this little video because I always like force my students to meditate in class. It's something that is a big part of what I have learned to build my cup and my capacity. It really helps me. But when I started meditating, I realized that I didn't understand what meditation was. I thought I was supposed to make my brain be quiet, and my brain is never quiet. And then I learned that that's not actually the point. And so I'm going to show you a really quick, like 1.5 minute animation about kind of how this process should feel. So I'm going to open that.
Training the mind is often quite different to how people imagine it to be. Maybe they have an idea it's about stopping thoughts or eliminating feelings, but the reality is a bit different. An easy way to think of it is to imagine yourself sitting on the side of a busy road, the passing cars representing the thoughts and the feelings. All you have to do is to sit there and watch the cars. Sounds easy, right? But what usually happens is that we feel a bit unsettled by the movement of the traffic. So we run out into the road and try and stop the cars, or maybe even chase after a few, forgetting that the idea was to just sit here. And of course, all of this running around only adds to the feeling of restlessness in the mind. So training the mind is about changing our relationship with the passing thoughts and feelings, learning how to view them with a little more perspective. And when we do this, we naturally find a place of calm. But we sometimes forget the idea of the exercise and become distracted. Of course we will. But as soon as we remember, here we are, back on the side of the road again, just watching the traffic go by, perfectly at ease in both body and mind.
Okay. So basically, so I always try to remember that. It's like you're sitting there and the thoughts are going by. I'm just not going to chase them. I'm just not going to chase them. Just going to focus on my breath, not going to chase them. And so I have some apps here. So I have Headspace, Calm, Insight Timer, and Shine. All of these have some free content. I use Headspace, and they've made a lot of content free this last year. And if folks are unemployed, they can have access to the whole thing for free. I also added Liberate, which is something that I recently read about, which is a subscription-based meditation app that includes practices and talks designed for BIPOC folks. It's filled with anti-oppressive meditations, focusing on navigating microaggressions, systems of oppression, things like that. So there's so many apps out there that can be really, really useful. Yeah. So other things I love. See, I have a little more content, and if people need to leave, well, we still got 10 minutes. Okay. So I'm really also a fan, and if you have me for Hubsy, we're going to talk about this later this year, of acceptance and commitment therapy, which is a third wave therapy approach that is mindfulness based. And one of the things that is really stressed in that is remembering that thoughts are just thoughts. They're not facts. Our brains think all sorts of things. And so don't believe everything you think. And so one strategy that they throw out is another way to stop yourself from chasing thoughts. They call it diffusion techniques, but little things you can do to separate from your thoughts. And so kind of one thing I already talked about, instead of saying, I'm an anxious mess, I'm thinking that I'm an anxious mess. Or taking your thought, imagine it literally floating away, repeating it over and over. I'm stupid, I'm stupid, I'm stupid, I'm stupid, I'm stupid, until it starts losing its power. Or give that nasty voice that you have a name and then call it out. My nasty voice's name is Bianca, and she's real mean sometimes. And then I can just give it a name and it loses its power. But any of these strategies that you can incorporate, this is a workbook, Get Out of Your Mind and Into Your Life. I like it because it's a really practical tool for applying some of these approaches, and it's very mindfulness and value-based. And so there's a lot of really great activities in it. Play, have fun, have so much fun. Creativity, make something. The definition of play, which is like something that is like not easy to define, but it's from this book, which is called Play, is pleasurable and apparently purposeless activity. Something you do that has no purpose at all, just for fun. Dance, color, tell a story, make something out of clay. Doing something to activate parts of your brain that you don't normally activate. Okay, boundaries. I'm not going to spend too much time on this right now because this is like another 2-hour talk. And I only have an hour today. But to me, boundaries are the heart of all of this. And not boundaries like don't give people your phone number, don't have multiple relationships with people, but boundaries like be mindful of your time. How much time are you spending? How much energy are you spending? How much are you separating your personal life from your work life? And those are the things that are the most important when you are integrating all of this, is making sure that your boundaries are strong. Other things, use humor, watch something funny, laugh, cultivate your gratitude. Feel honored that you're a social worker. I love social work. My whole heart is in it all the time. It's brought so much joy to my life. But there have been times when I've been overwhelmed and exhausted by it too. But I kind of bring myself back to just how much of an honor it is to be a part of people's journey, whether it be my staff or my students or the folks that I've worked with over the years and our housing programs. And I ground myself in that because it's real and it's true. It's why I chose this profession. It wasn't dumped on me. I picked it. All right. Maybe I will finish on time. That's even more exciting. Another book I really like, so I'm a big fan of Brene Brown, and one of the reasons I love her is she is a super well-known social worker who has her bachelor's in social work, her master's in social work, and her PhD in social work. And she has done a lot of research on individuals who have I would define it as folks with a really, really big cup. And she found in her research 10 themes. So this is her book, The Gifts of Imperfection. And they just released the 20th anniversary edition of this book. And it's divided into what are called these guideposts of wholehearted living. And they're here. So letting go of these. So these are the 10, and you'll see a lot of them were reflected in what we talked about today. But letting go of this side, but authenticity, self-compassion, resilient spirit, gratitude and joy, intuition, creativity, play and rest, calm and stillness, meaningful work like social work, and laughter, song, and dance. I love this book, and I think it's a really great, it's a really easy read. And actually in the resources slide that I'm going to have at the very end, there's a link to another quiz, and it's will rank you on these. And so you can see which areas you're better at and which areas you need to work on, and there's tips for building your capacity. So that's a lot of stuff I just threw at you, just like bam, bam, breathe, make something, have fun, be creative. So what do you do with all that? Here's the thing about this. Some things work for some people and some things don't work for other people. I will tell you right now, I like to walk. I like no other kind of exercise ever in life, ever. And I have tried many things and nothing works. And so many people are like, go to the gym, take a class. It does not work for me. It will never work for me. And you are the only one who will know what works for you. So I can give you strategies, and here's a whole bunch of them to sort through, some that are simple and really easy, some that are more complicated and are about different relationships with yourself. But at the end of the day, only you know what will work for you. But I really encourage you to find something that you can do as a daily practice. Something that you can incorporate every day or once a week, a regular part of your life that will build your capacity when you are not in struggle. It can be as simple as at the beginning of the day, writing down an intention for the day. At the end of the day, writing down what you're going to put down, writing down what you're grateful for, building in mindfulness, creating routines. One activity I did with my staff once was we made these self-care boxes, which I have one across the room, but we would all put them in our desks, and we filled them with things. I had letters from staff and participants that were meaningful to me. Tea, chocolate, stuff to touch that I liked when I'm stressed. I have like a bunch of stress balls from this cat. I have a real cat in my lap too, but a stress ball. I have like a bunch of stuff that smells good, and because it's all about grounding and being present in the moment, especially when you're really overwhelmed. So there's a reason that you do all of those things. So whatever works for you. And then I have on here, make a self-care plan. And in the last side, I have, I'll show you, but there's a link to a PDF document that you can print out and like make your own plan and write down what strategies you think will work for you. Even if it's like maybe read one of these books. But don't have it be another thing that stresses you out, that makes you feel exhausted or really like swamped. And just remember that what works for somebody might not work for you. So I'm going to show you the resources, and then I'm going to go back to that. So these are the books that I talked about. And then in this last slide, there's some TED Talks that you can watch about different ways to deal with stress. This is the link to the self-compassion quiz, the wholehearted inventory. It's the Brene Brown quiz about those areas and like how to figure out which ones you're stronger in. This is a link to about 80 different acceptance and commitment therapy worksheets. So everything from mindfulness techniques to breathing exercises to just ways to explore your thoughts. And then this is the self-care plan that I talked about that I use. And I like it because it allows you to think about how you could incorporate things for mind, body, spirituality, all aspects of yourself, and then also to talk about the barriers. All right. That's all. I got through that. I got through that on time. So now I'm going to open it up for questions. And yeah, questions.
There's one question, Kim. Someone says, where can they access the power?
Can we put it in YouTube? Like, can I add it as a file or the Google? I'll find a way.
We can definitely try to see if we could attach it somehow. I know that internally for the students, we could definitely put it in our Google Drive. But in terms of being able to share it otherwise, we can figure it out, see if we can link it to the YouTube video. Otherwise, if you don't get to see where to get it from in a couple of weeks, please let us know and we'll send it out your way.
I also have my email. I just put it in the chat. So if folks want to just email me, I'll just send it to you. Other questions? You're welcome. Yay. So now I want to hear from, as we wrap up, I want to hear from folks that are here. Like, what are you going to do? What are you going to try? Try something. What are you going to do?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. I like the fact that you said to get a therapist or go to therapy, because there was a time in my life that I was like, how can I be a social work if I have like such a messed up life, and like how can I help people if I can help myself? And I talked to multiple people and they were like, you need to get a therapist whether you like it or not. It's like you could help yourself and help others in that way. So I appreciate you saying that, because that encourages other people as well. So
yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I want to say, like, I believe that if you have like a personal reason to do this work, it makes you a stronger social worker because you're in it with your heart, your whole heart. It just means that you might have to tend to those roots a little differently, but I think it's a superpower and it's a strength. And for me, it's about just modeling, I came to this work because I wanted to change the way we talk about mental health and change the way we treat mental health. And to do that, I feel like I also have to take away a lot of the stigma around mental health. So thank you for sharing that. And also just saying that, like, one of the benefits of this last year we've been through is that therapy is more accessible than it's ever been. You can see a therapist without leaving your home. You can see a therapist without them ever seeing your face if you want. There's so many accessible ways to get support. So, yeah. Any other thoughts? All right, so put in the chat, what are you going to do? Oh, and I'm so excited to read all the comments about this, especially from some of my students. Thanks for coming. Take a quick dance break and then finish your paper. I like that. Anyone else? What are you going to do? Nothing? Do something. Meditating more. I'm going to meditate after this because I didn't today. It really helps me. It builds my capacity. Take a walk, go outside more, read more books. Yeah. Walk around and laugh at funny things after a long day, especially meditation. Nice. Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, apps make all of this so accessible, and you can find like the one that I use at Headspace, like you can pick a different person that talks. So you can pick a voice that works for you. You can pick how much you hear. I, for years, was like, I don't want to meditate. I don't like cheesy music and all that. And you can find something that's not like that at all. You can, and a lot of them have sleep meditations too, or like sleep stories, which are like bedtime stories for adults that are really great. Stay consistent with my skincare routine and reading more books. Great. And I think you're all pointing out that like it can be something really small. It's just a way to make you aware of your body. So, all right. Thank you for your time and have a wonderful day. Take care of yourselves. I hope you are sustainable social workers in it for the long haul.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.